Today, I'm making issue 3 of my comic Bullet Boy, the original superhero I made as a kid. Only this time, I'm pretty much on my own. For issues 1 and 2, I had old comics and old finished pages from all those years ago to guide me. But for issue 3, all I've got is a half-baked villain, and nothing else. So I'm gonna start by fully reimagining this villain, then write a brand new story, and draw every single page, to see if I can tell a better Bullet Boy story now than I ever could back then. Did I really come up with all my best ideas as a kid, or will I be able to make something even better? Let's find out by starting with what 12-year-old me had in mind for the villain. Oh, and as always, if you want to continue watching me build my superhero universe and want to learn how to build one yourself, subscribe so you don't miss the next video like this one. So far, each villain has been introduced in the exact same order I created them back then. In issue 1, we meet a rogue robot leader named Shaka. In issue 2, the elusive and almost uncatchable Avoidja, which means issue 3 needs to introduce an angry, mindless chunk of clay named Bulk. Essentially, Bullet Boy's version of Clayface or Sandman. The bio I wrote for him in my old sketchbook says that Bulk was created one night at a modeling clay company after some scientists combined some chemicals, and when they spilled on the floor, they caused a crazy chain reaction and came to life. As far as villain origins go, this was pretty tame and kind of funny. Almost feels like the kind of story you'd find in a Captain Underpants book. And it looks like my mom left a little note on my sketchbook when I wasn't looking. Now, of course, it's impossible to know exactly the kind of Bullet Boy comic I would have made back when I wrote this, but if I had to guess, it would go something like this. Scientists at the clay factory accidentally create Bulk. He breaks out of the factory, wreaks havoc on the city, and finally, Bullet Boy would have to save the day. And now that we have a pretty good idea of where I would have gone with this story, we can finally start writing the issue, the first in many steps of building this comic from scratch. And stick around, because if we pull this off, I want to go back to the early days of comics and add something to this issue that you almost never see in indie comics now. Because issue 3 is a continuation, we need to make sure that we're adding elements that carry over. So before we can just jump in and turn this bare bones plot into a full-fledged issue, let me give you a 10-second recap. This is our protagonist, Josh McKean, who for the first couple issues has solidified himself as Bullet Boy, the city's latest superhero. Using his strength, speed, and ultra durability, he's been able to not only make a name for himself, but put away his first villains.
Ooh, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
But his real dream is to join the city's resident superhero team, the Hero Assembly. And after the events of issue 2, he might really have a shot. The question we're left with is, will he demonstrate that he has what it takes to join their team? So we have to find some way to challenge Bullet Boy in a new way that shows the Assembly he can bring more to the table than just his super speed. And of course, we can't forget that this is also an issue where he needs to meet and fight Bulk. Somehow we'll have to tie in that arc as well. And I think I have a perfect idea to start with. We need to turn Bulk from a pile of clay into a monster. Because you might be asking yourself, does he really have any motivation to be the villain of this story? I kind of think so. I mean, if suddenly I woke up as a hunk of clay, I'd be pretty mad too. In all seriousness, for Bulk, it's actually much worse. Because he was actually designed as a toy. The company making this clay was actually in the middle of developing a tech-based formula that infused their clay with micro nanites, creating a clay that can mold entirely on its own and instantly form itself into whatever the user thinks of.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I could feel it.
So imagine waking up and upon taking to the streets to live out your purpose as the next big toy, people start running away from you. They're scared. Now he's a towering, huge monster against his own will. And if we have Bullet Boy somehow involved in creating Bulk, he'd be uniquely responsible for stopping it. But what would he be doing near any one of these factories? Maybe there's a robbery that's going on there, and Bullet Boy shows up to stop them. But in order to keep things interesting, they shouldn't just be your average thugs. They could be a new villain, but we don't want to overshadow Bulk in his debut issue. He's the main villain of this story, and we just put away Avoidja. So while he definitely won't be behind bars for long, it wouldn't be right to bring him back in the very next issue. I really like the idea of having Shaka from the first issue return, but that should be something we really build up to, not drop all at once. But you know, even after Shaka was destroyed, he still had hundreds of robot followers left that survived. And if they all got together and planned up some way to revive him, they would absolutely be raiding the manufacturing plant for parts to resurrect their leader. So let's design what they should look like. I'll start by taking Shaka's drone soldiers and make it look like they've built themselves up with some scrap pieces. These acolytes would not only be a great tease for the return of our old villain, but would also be the perfect catalyst to get Bullet Boy exactly where we need him. So now we have this action-packed intro to the story with Bullet Boy fighting Shaka's acolytes. And if this fight goes a little haywire and crashes into the right factory, boom, Bulk is born and we have our villain. All of this gives us a clear trajectory for how the rest of this story is gonna go. Alongside a few other things things I definitely want to include, like keeping Bullet Boy moving toward his goal of joining the hero assembly. Now that I have a pretty good idea of where the story's gonna end up, I finally get to start working on the comic's art. And while it can be a lot of fun, it's no walk in the park either. With an average of around 5 to 6 panels per page, it's a lot of individual drawings. And when you start factoring in color blocking, shading, and colors themselves, sometimes a page can take a few days. But fortunately, by now, I think I could draw Bullet Boy himself in my sleep. In most cases, I find myself going to ink and color every drawing of him first, just so it's done. This also means that once I've drawn every Bullet Boy, I'm left with drawing everything else, like buildings or cars, which I'm not the best at, but the only way to improve is by doing it again and again. And in some cases, it helps if they're blocked by a huge blob of clay. While Bulk didn't have to look exactly the same in every panel, because he's constantly changing shape and reforming, he did present other challenges I didn't expect. There were a few times where it was a real challenge to find new ways to show Bulk's scale, especially in panels that show Bullet Boy and Bulk at the same time. Up angles, down angles, forced perspective, I did a little bit of everything. As I'm completing pages, I'm taking them from Procreate on my iPad and bringing them into Adobe Illustrator where I do all of my lettering, which is a total challenge in itself, and where I finally start writing down a lot of the characters' dialogue. When I'm this close to finishing a comic, I always hit a point where I start second guessing a lot of my decisions on story, on art, the direction I'm taking things, because now more than ever, I'm stepping into uncharted territory. I won't be able to rely on those old drawings or storylines to create something new forever. All I can do is make choices that feel right to me now. And as long as I'm doing my best to make the story I'd want to read, I know it's something that my younger self would have lost his mind over. And the truth is, I'm not just making these comics for myself anymore. Ever since I started sharing Bullet Boy on my YouTube channel, you guys have been part of this journey too. The reason I've even made it this far is because you guys watched these videos, invested in these characters, and helped me bring this childhood dream to life. So in this issue, I want to add something special in a way to celebrate that. But before I can add it, I've really got to finish this comic. It is so rewarding to know that when all the work is done, you'll finally be able to share it with the world. But if you're like me, the last thing you want to do after brainstorming, writing, drawing, and lettering the entire book is to spend another month or two hunting and searching for the right place to get it printed. And there are a lot of options out there. Some, while they might be cheap, aren't quality, or they'll have confusing templates and bad communication, so you just have to cross your fingers that everything turns out okay. Which is why for every comic I've made so far, I've used Mix'em, a website that prints all kinds of products and also the sponsor of this video. Every time I finish my work, it's nice to know that in just a few clicks, I can go to their website and know exactly what I'm getting in the finished product. Their website is easy to navigate and find what you're looking for. You can compare paper stocks, get live quotes for anything you want to make, and download templates to make sure everything is sized perfectly. I'm an extremely visual person, so before I ever placed my first order, what really won me over was Mix'em's online preview tool, because being able to flip through a digital version of my comic page by page gave me fantastic peace of mind.
Say that again?
And anytime I had questions, their print expert team was a click away and ready to help if I had any questions before I placed my order. And if I wanted, for a reasonable price, I could get just one of my comics printed to test it out. And now sure, you might be able to find cheaper options overseas, but the combination of amazing print quality, reliable support, and fast turnaround times that Mix'em offers has been worth it for me every single time. If you're ready to bring your comic to life, you can use my code XanderFlicks at checkout for 5% off. Just hit the link in the description to get started. I think I'm ready to submit my order, but there's one thing I still need to add. Growing up, when I read comics, I would just enjoy the art and story, sometimes over and over to the point where they kind of look like this. But sometimes on a long car ride, or when I was just bored enough, after I looked at all the ads between the pages, I'd stumble upon this letter section in the back. For years, especially in the golden days before the age of social media, fans would write in their theories, questions, and general comments for the creators. And right there, under their submission, the creators would talk right back. I can imagine that in those days, when there weren't comment sections or forums, it made that community feel alive. Like the people telling the story were actively listening and engaging with the readers. So for Bullet Boy, I kind of wanted to bring that back, only I don't have a name for mine yet. Marvel, for example, had plenty of these fan mail sections, and sometimes had fun themed names. The Uncanny X-Men had one called X-Mail, Spider-Man had one called the Spider's Web, and the general Marvel style was to call them the Marvel Bullpen Bulletins. That was enough to get me started on a name. Introducing Bullet Point. a direct reference to Bullet Boy's name, and a bullet symbol, like the one you'd see in a list of several items, and in this case, questions. Once I whipped up a logo and put a call out for submissions, you guys really delivered. I spent time reading through everything, picking the ones that didn't spoil future stuff that I've already talked about in my videos, opting to feature stuff that connected to the comics that have been published so far, just in case you didn't want any spoilers. There's this one, for example, from Andres, who asks, do you see a future where you make a spin-off series dedicated to the Hero Assembly superhero team? And is the Next Tech organization that created the robot Shaka a secretly corrupt organization like Oscorp Industries and Spider-Man? Well, let's go ahead and reply. Hi Andres, one of the hardest parts of redesigning my childhood superheroes, and villains as well, for my videos is that I'm not just updating their designs. In many cases, I'm also completely rewriting their origin stories based on the vague ideas I had for them when I was a kid. In many cases, I try to construct their stories and their powers in a way that would allow them to have a standalone comic series of their very own someday. A long way to say, yes, I would love for each hero to have their own comic, standalone, or even a limited origin arc that chronicles each member's path to joining the Hero Assembly Avengers style. As for the Next Tech organization, at this point, most signs are pointing to negligence in the best case scenario. I think that time will tell if their intentions are truly nefarious. At the very least, I can't imagine robots going rogue is good for business, especially when they're trying to steal parts from factories and cause plenty of incidental damage in the process. I honestly can't wait to grow this section and feature even more of your ideas and fan art. All you have to do is leave a comment or tag your post with hashtag #AskBulletPoint. And just like that, my order of Bullet Boy 3 was placed, and a few weeks later, the boxes showed up. And yeah, that feeling never gets old. This completed third comic officially takes Bullet Boy from a fun childhood idea to a fully realized trilogy. 3 issues that mark the beginning of this universe. Bullet Boy issue 3 is really about what happens when even the best intentions go sideways, and how the way you handle these mistakes can make a difference. And thankfully for him, he might not have to do it alone, especially if he really ever wants to be on the Hero Assembly someday. All 3 of them are available digitally or physically on my website. You can even get them signed. As far as issue 4 goes, we're only just getting started, because there are still so many characters, villains, and stories waiting their turn to be told. And if you can't wait for more Bullet Boy lore and want to learn more about my superhero universe, watch this video right here. See you in the next one.